Hey guys, I want to show you a game that I really think is going to be something special. It's called the Bloodline, and it's a fantasy RPG, and as you can see, it's got a very simple low poly style, but this game is actually far from simple. It describes itself as a sandbox RPG, and that couldn't be more accurate because you can really do anything in this game. All the features that you would normally expect of a quality fantasy RPG are there, things like crafting, cooking, potion making. There are factions and guilds, sneaking and thieving, a bunch of very big, very nice looking cities with lots of people and lots of things to do, lots of different mounts, not just horses, but donkeys, boars, a broomstick. You can even get a kind of dwarven car if you want. And there are a bunch more of these more unique features that you don't really see in every game. For instance, you can grapple and climb pretty much any surface, which lets you do some cool things like swinging around or rappelling down walls. You can also grapple enemies and pull them towards you. There's also some base building. You can freely build smaller objects, and then there's a whole village that you can kind of rebuild over time with all kinds of different buildings. If you want to level up magic from translating scrolls instead of casting spells, you can do that. There are a bunch of non-combat skills that are actually pretty fun and not too tedious as well. There's even a spell that lets you give any physics item a pair of wings so you can use it to fly around. And that's another thing, the game uses a physics engine that lets you interact with all kinds of items to move them around, pick them up and throw them. You can even cut off someone's leg or something and throw it at them. It also means you can use the environment. For example, throwing someone into a wall will damage them. Another great system is the skill and level up system, and basically it's one of those ones where skills level up in real time as you use them, you know? So you can't just juice a skill that you've never actually used before, and your character's levels end up really reflecting your playstyle, which is very cool and the most fitting for an RPG, I think. So there are just a lot of really good features in this game, too many to go over every single one, but what I do want to talk about a little more is the combat, because as good as everything else is, the combat is incredible. So at first, the basic combat isn't too crazy. You swing your sword around, you can block and parry, but then you've also got a couple ability bars, and this is where it gets really cool, because the abilities in this game are so much fun. So you got a bunch of different skill trees, different melee weapons, ranged weapons, you see there are flintlocks, which is really cool. I like when fantasy games include some firearms, and then you got magic too, of course, a whole bunch of it. And let me tell you, the magic in this game is just so cool, so much cooler than other games. The things you can do here are the kind of things you have to mod into other games. So if we take a look at some of the different schools of magic, Earth for example is one of my favorites. This is like the closest a game has come to making me feel like I'm earthbending, you know? Crushing people under a giant slab of rock, or between two of them, stomping the ground and absolutely launching a man. The necromancy tree is another great one. You can do so many cool things with it. You can make someone fight their own soul. You can summon all kinds of skeletons to help you out. You can resurrect like any person or creature. I res this bear and it looked a little fucked up, but it's pretty cool having a giant zombie bear following you around. There's even basically a force choke, which is something I wish every game had. And I could keep going, you know, ice is another fun one, freezing everyone or freezing the ground and watching them all slip and slide around. The fire spells all look incredibly cool. Again, I feel like a firebender using these. The druid tree, I feel like druids are sometimes a little boring in games, like, okay, you can snare someone with vines or you can turn into a bear. Well, you can do those things in this game, but you can also get flower turrets, explosive mushroom minefields. You can turn into a bunch of different birds and fly around, but they all have ranged attacks too, so really it feels more like turning into an attack jet or something. So without going on and on about every spell in the game, I think you can see what I'm talking about. This isn't your average selection of magic. And the combinations between different skill trees and spells that you can come up with, it really allows for a lot of freedom and just a lot of fun trying everything out. Because you've also still got the other combat styles, right? There's even more to add to it, and those abilities are right up there with the spells. You got some really cool stuff. You know, again, sometimes the unarmed combat in RPGs is pretty uninspired. Not here. Want to sweep a goblin's legs and literally stomp his head out of existence? You can do that. Want to grab someone and beat their face in before throwing them at their friend? You can do that. Or you can do it with a dagger if you prefer. Again, I could go on and on showing you every skill in the game, which would take a long damn time because there are so many, but I'm not going to do that. I think this is enough to show you how cool the combat is, and I think more RPGs need to do this, you know? A lot of them follow the sort of Bethesda model, and as great as some of those games are, combat isn't really their strong suit. Like, I love Skyrim, but this game is already so much more fun mechanically. It's more up the alley of something like Cyberpunk with the much more engaging combat. Now, the one thing about this game, it is early access, and unlike most early access games that I've talked about, this one is very early access. Everything you've seen in this video is in the game currently, but there is a lot missing too. The story's barely implemented as of now, lots of quests are still under construction, and you'll quickly notice that some cities and areas are much emptier than others. So this game is going to need some time and some support before it really becomes a great game, but I think the foundation is clearly there, and this is the kind of game I'd love to see make it. You know, it might be missing content right now, but you can always add that later. The important thing is that all the core elements are there. You know, I've talked about the mechanics already, but I also only really encountered some minor bugs, and the game runs pretty well aside from some skills that kill the FPS harder than the enemies. But overall, you can feel that this is a very well-made game, and my understanding is that it started as a single dev project, and that's pretty amazing given the scale and ambition of the game, even just to this point. So if you also want to see this game grow, you know, I've played it for 18 hours already, which is pretty decent for a less than $30 game at this stage of development, so I think you can easily have a lot of fun with it right now if you want to pull the trigger, but at least put it on your wish list and keep an eye on it, because I could only imagine if it gets fully fleshed out. And that's that, so let me know what you think about this one. I'm very excited to see where it goes, and I hope you can have some fun with it too. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.